Hello, my name is Jay Ballard, and I will be talking about a classical composer, Franz Joseph Haydn, born 31st March of 1732 and ended his work on life on 31st May of 1809. Now, who is Franz Haydn? Well, he was a classical composer and considered one of the four greats of his era, which also included Beethoven and Mozart, to name two of them. He was born in a village in Austria called Rau on the 31st March of 1732, and he passed in May of 1809 in Vienna, Austria. He was born of humble parents, both working class. His father was a wheelwright, mother was a cook for the lords and lordships of the village they were in. He was the second son of the family, and he was discovered to have a immense musical aptitude and talent at an extremely young age. So much so that at age 6 he was taken by his family's cousin, who happened to be a school principal and a choir master. It was there that his cousin taught him instruments, taught him vocals, taught him how to sing, taught him the choir, and um, enabled him to springboard his career. Um, he also composed many pieces in his lifetime that influenced the entire genre and era that he composed within, and he had a unique skill when composing string quartets. Now, through his education and choir master cousin, he was actually scouted by the music director of St. Stephen's Cathedral in Vienna, Austria. It was there where he was taken on, moved to Vienna, was living there and learning choir and various instruments through the St. Stephen's Cathedral. But there's one point in his musical aptitudes and studies that he was lacking, and that was musical theory. He was actually kicked out of this choir when he turned 17 due to a change in his voice that happened with puberty. Knowing this lack of musical studies and knowledge of the musical theory, after he was kicked out, he actually self-studied and read up on his deficiencies through the works of a man named Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach. Now, this individual made many books and many educational materials on musical theory, was more from the Baroque era. He stayed in Vienna and played locally at local venues before a nobleman named Karl Funberg employed him, and then he played chamber music for his patron, and through that he was able to write string quartets. Through his patron, he was able to use these connections and influence to meet many other musicians, noblemen, patrons throughout his circles. Um, Now, this nobleman, Karl Funberg, actually ran into some financial hardships and released Haydn out to a man called Ferdinand Maximilian von Morsen, who is a Bohemian count. It was here he was able to write his first symphonies, learned more musical diversity from instruments, and was able to develop this lifelong composure style that he's known for. And throughout this Bohemian count, he ran into some contacts. One was actually Mozart, who became friends with, and they studied, composed together, compared notes, and offered their inputs on the various works that they also been working on. And they're able to actually influence each other's music. He brought more like style and composure to Mozart's music, and Mozart brought a little of that flair to his own. Now, it was at this time where Ferdinand Maximilian von Morsen also ran into some financial hardships, a common theme in this era, and a prince, Paul Antal Esterhazy, picked him up as a court musician. And through this family, the Esterhazys, they were a major contributor to Haydn and his development. And it was so much so, and he was so much respected and treated well by the family, that he actually worked for the Esterházys until his own death. Now, after Paul Esterházy passed, his brother Miklos was appointed as the head of household and actually appointed Haydn as the assistant conductor and later musical director of their court orchestra. Now, it only says from 1761 to 1790. That's because at 1790, Prince Miklos actually died, and his son, Prince Antal, really didn't like music, but he respected Haydn enough to keep him on payroll and dismissed him from most of his duties, save for playing at parties and events. Now, it was at this time he was able to branch out his development and his reputation. He actually moved to England under the sponsorship of Johann Salomon, where he met Beethoven, a very young Beethoven, and he was able to work with him, notice Beethoven's talent, and said, hey, I want to be part of this person's life because there's no way that he's going to become so famous that, that I want to be the one to instruct him. So he's actually able to convince Beethoven's patron at the time to send him to Vienna to get tutelage under Haydn. It was there where he promoted and was able to influence Beethoven's works by giving it the emotional depth that he needed in his composures. Now, during his time of composing, he did make a song that is still played relatively frequently to this day. It's a song, Gott erhalt Franz der Kaiser, which became the national anthem of Austria at the time and is still used as the German national anthem today. He's actually cited for the work The Creation, which was called an oratorios and was the first piece in that time to be composed for and sung in both German and English because of his time that he spent in England. He made something called the Emperor Quartet, which was considered one of the finest string quartets that was ever produced. His Symphony Number 102 in B-flat major is considered to be one of his greatest symphonies, but his own favorite composition that he did was called the Trau Symphony in E minor, that's number 44. It was his own favorite composition, and was actually played at his funeral and dubbed the Morning Symphony. Now, here are some controversies and fun facts about Franz Haydn. Is that he composed 108 symphonies along with various other works like the quartets and oratorios and everything. But out of all the 108, they actually lost number 106. No one can find it. No one has any record of it. They know it was there, but the music for it lost the time. He did end up in a marriage with a woman, Maria Ann Teresa Keller, and didn't have any kids, and they were rather unhappy and openly unhappy about it. And it was depicted on both sides that they were having affairs. Marie and Haydn were both having affairs with other people. Through his employment at the Esterházys, a woman named Luigia Polzelli, who was a vocalist and a wife to a violinist, Antonio Polzelli, who actually played for the orchestras and the choirs of the Esterházy family. He actually started having an affair with her. She was dealing with Antonio, who was suffering complications of prolonged tuberculosis. And everyone, including the husband Antonio, suspected Haydn and Luigia to have a son that they named Antonio as well. But they never admitted to the son being of Haydn's, mainly due to the church involvement in society and how everything was handled back then. They had a giant influence on involvement in society in Haydn's life, and they due to the church rules and regulations, divorce was considered outright, and extramarital affairs were also deemed punishable. And Haydn had a giant influence, and a giant supporter of his was the church. They didn't give up on each other. He supported and pretty much gave child support to Luigia throughout the years, even after they split and he was in England and everything. And he even left her a pension and her family a pension on his death. A crazy fun fact as well is that he was in Vienna in 1809 when Napoleon invaded. And he was not doing well at this point of his life. He was very frail and didn't really want to leave his house, didn't want to go anywhere. And with the respect and renown he had, Napoleon, an invading army from France, left guards at his residence to make sure he was okay and no one messed with him. And military members even showed him respect by coming to his house on like off duties and talking to him about his works and even singing his works and symphonies to him. And then shortly after that, he died during Napoleon's occupation of Vienna later that month, in the 31st of May of 1809. So, all in all, Haydn was considered one of the four great composers of his era. He shared critiques and lessons with both Mozart and Beethoven. He was very well known and renowned in his time, but in today's society, like Mozart and Beethoven are more recognized names with the general populace, which is crazy because when he was alive, Mozart was almost kind of like not unpopular, but not a great well-known name at his time. Like Beethoven, Haydn, they were just like the rock stars. He influenced both Mozart and Beethoven's musical aptitudes. And all in all, he was a very upbeat, renowned, respected, and overall just listed as like a cheerful and good guy. And these are further references that we used for the presentation. Thank you for your time.